Now, here I want to give you a very important piece of information. Wordsworth was clearly inspired from a critic called John Dennis, who had his own ideas and critical approaches towards poetry and was not a very prominent critic during those times. Very prominent in the sense, not playing this entire idea of criticism on the front. Why? Because Alexander Pope, he attacked him, he criticized him in some of his works, for example, in Essay of Criticism, in An Essay of Criticism, and the Dunciad, he takes up this instances of, or he criticizes Mr. John Dennis. So he was not a very prominent figure, prominent critical figure during those times, but Wordsworth was clearly inspired from whatever aesthetic system he has provided. And what was it? John Dennis first of all said that passion consists of, or passion can be divided into two types. He says that when you see an object, there is something called an ordinary passion which is generated, and there is something called an enthusiastic passion which is generated the next. These two types of passion simply means, in simple words, that when you look at an object, and you try to unravel the phenomena of that object, the phenomena as revealed by the senses, the five human senses, there is this one kind of passion, one kind of ordinary passion, and another one, that is enthusiastic passion, is when the phenomena is expressed in art. Or if I put it more simplistically, when you see a particular object, if the scientific matter of fact information is revealed, it is expressed, it is the part of that ordinary passion which is generated. So if you remember, I took up the example of maybe the purple flowers or some tulips. When you look at a particular flower or a tulip, the moment you feel elated, those five senses are catered. You feel happy looking at it, and a sense of joy is created. That is the part of the basic human ordinary passion. Another one is when you go back and think about that particular tulip, and some thoughts, some feelings come to your mind, then that becomes the part of your enthusiastic passion. Now, what Wordsworth has done in his particular aesthetic system of poetry through his poetic theories, or whatever he describes in spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, what he says is this: the moment you see a particular object and certain feelings that come to you, no, they are not the part of your poetic composition. Rather, after some time, when in a peaceful situation, when in a quiet situation, you think back and you recall that same tulip, that same flower, or that same object, and the kind of feelings that are generated, how those feelings would be generated, you will have a certain number of thoughts. Say, infinite number of thoughts may come up. Infinite number of thoughts of general things. Now, out of those infinite thoughts, you'll rummage through, rummage, you'll rummage through your thoughts and find out which one suits out, or which one gives the right feeling, which one gives the right name to that feeling when you're thinking back or when you're recalling about those feelings, right? So when you rummage through your thoughts, you take up certain thoughts. So this was a thought that was generated, and then you give name, or you use language by which you describe those feelings that are generated. Now, this is where the phenomena, how it gets expressed in arts. So Wordsworth was deeply inspired, was clearly inspired from the critical approaches, from the ideas that John Dennis has presented initially, right? And if you remember, in one of the previous audios, I was talking about imaginative exertion or meditative exertion or ordinary exertion, and I said that the imaginative or meditative exertion in a poem increases if these imaginative exertions affect the mind by properties conferred or by the life they give, and these imaginative meditative exertions in a poet decreases the moment the object affects the mere human beings from the property with which they were endowed. Or in simple words, the imaginative exertion will be higher, the interplay of imagination will be higher if it caters to not just the basic properties but to the ultimate intellectual moral truth. right? And if it just an imaginative exertion is low, is less, is decreased the moment it simply caters to the five senses. So this is nothing but a contrast to someone's higher plane of cognition. When poetry appeals to someone's higher plane of cognition, that is called philosophy, then it is poetry. Poetry has two ends. Poetry has two basic primary purposes. One is to give pleasure, and another one is to give instruction. But Mr. Wordsworth says that the ultimate role, the ultimate end, or the ultimate duty, or the ultimate function of poetry is not just to give pleasure or instruction, it is to give rise to the intellectual moral truth. Ideal of an ordered or an harmonious or a peaceful society, but rural settings or rural life can also be about poverty. Rural settings can also be about lack of resources, right? Rural settings can also be about that very essential, unmissable reality of human life, right? So he's not really bothered about these practical aspects of rustic life, these practical aspects of rural settings. He's more concerned about the romantic notion that we form the moment we attach or the moment we use the word countryside or rustic life, right? He associates it well with nature, in the sense of nature, not as a negative or the lopsidedness of the urban life, right? Now, when he says that low and rustic life should be ideally chosen, and that could also be seen why he decided to live permanently among the lakeland, or among the area that is the town of Lakeland. That's why he was known as one of the famous lake poets, right? So he deliberately decided to choose a rustic life because he says that in that condition, in that rustic situation, in that rustic lowly life, he finds that the basic, essential, primitive, and I don't mean, and I'm not using the word primitive in the negative sense, but in the sense of pure, in the sense of purity. The basic primordial or the primitive or the primal passions, the essential passions of heart, of human heart, they find better soil to emerge. They find better soil to develop themselves. They find better soil in which they can gain maturity, in which they can ripen itself, right? Why? Because they're less under restraint. What does he mean? Now, what exactly he means by this, they are less under restraint? When you talk of the town life or the city life, or if you talk of Wordsworth times during the time when industrial revolution was at its peak, and the people were clearly segregating themselves among the city versus, or the town versus village life, and they were clearly, decidedly moving towards the city life because somewhere it provided better opportunities, and that congregation of men entirely went towards the city life. But he also says that this city life has a very corrupting influence. And on the other hand, nature's influence is both morally and imaginatively elevating. And this could be one of the reasons why he deliberately decided to live or reside by the lakeland or by the lakeside, right? He was one of the lake poets. Why? Because he felt that this influence, that is nature's influence, is morally elevating. It is even imaginatively elevating. And the city life has a corrupting influence. It is more like very hollow. It is restrained. Why? You have to act very civilized in a particular human civilization as per the regulations of particular human civilization, right? That's why it is very restrained in nature. Whereas if you're into the countryside settings, you'll speak more plainer, your language would be more emphatic, you won't be very hollow in your language, you won't be very showy or pretentious in your language, you would not end up using extravagant things just because you're trying to create an impression, right? And modern expression of language should be used for expression, not for impression, So this is again a very much real-time contrast between city life versus the village life or the countryside life. Just as language, which should be used for expression and not impression, similarly for this man, he found the rustic life, which is more closer to nature, as to be giving or imparting some sort of imaginative elevation or imaginative powers or morally elevating powers as compared to the corrupting powers of the city life or the town life, which is very artificial and over elaborate and very ornated one, right? So let me continue from the text now. Low and rustic life was generally chosen because in that condition the essential passions of the heart, they find a better soil in which they can attain their maturity, and they are less under restraint and speak a plainer and a more emphatic language, because in that condition of life our elementary feelings coexist in a state of greater simplicity. Why? Because when you're closer to nature, when you're away from all those contrived or insincerity that city life offers you or the country life offers you, or the so-called civilized notion of a particular country or of a particular human civilization, when you're not stuck into that particular Pandora box, then you may find yourself that your elementary feelings, your primal feelings, they are coexisting in a state of greater harmony and in a state of greater simplicity. And the moment your elementary feelings, they are more towards simplicity and harmony, you can contemplate more accurately. You can meditate more accurately. Again, meditation here has nothing to do with how we take it in the modern sense, but in the sense of contemplation. And then this is how, if you're in a greater state of simplicity, if you're in a greater state of purity and then an accurate contemplation, then of course your mannerisms of rural life will be germinating. Your mannerisms of those rural life will be germinating, would be erupting, would be coming up from those elementary feelings. And this, he says, would be more durable. They would be more, they can be easily comprehended, because the rural occupations that exist, they're very normative. These occupations that you can find in rural areas, they're very normative and routinely. So a very idealized picture of the pastoral settings is being talked of, right? And he says, because the things here are so primordial, they are so primal, they're so basic, they're so primitive in the positive sense, that is in the sense of simplicity. That's the reason why the conditions of passions of these men, they can be more easily comprehended, they can be more easily understandable, and they would be more universal in nature.